Let's just think of this as kind of a conversation, the way these things have already been going. And I'm going to touch on both career-focused stuff, but I also want to talk a little bit about just general landscape of, I won't say where we are right now because nobody knows where we are, but sort of what the current scenario is. You all might have, I don't know whether you saw this or not, this came out yesterday. I got this email yesterday evening, and the reason it was sent out is this is the director of the NSF. He's known as Ponch. But the bottom line there, right, is basically directed that they had to send this out to all defendant agency employees, contractors, and grantees, so I got it as a grantee, right? But it's basically in response to the recent preliminary injunction that came out a couple days ago, Friday, I don't know, something like that, which basically said the NSF, well, it was really directed at the NIH, and it basically said the NIH could not enforce the 15% IDC on existing awards. They had to honor what was actually in the award that was sent out. So that's good news, because that means that institutions and entities that have been counting or planning on that IDC to run their operations in the context of these awards can still do so. But my understanding, at least my reading of this, is that this is pertaining to existing awards. Anything can happen moving forward with new awards. And by new awards, I also mean, anything that hasn't been actually issued and that we haven't received yet. So for example, we have an REU program that the program directors basically did the typical, you are likely to get the award, but since JMU has not seen the award, we cannot do anything about it, and it can always change before JMU sees the award. So this is good because existing things can move forward, hopefully as planned, but that I don't think means anything about the future. So, but this is the landscape we're in, right? We're in a landscape where we have an administration that likes to issue provocative announcements, and then we have right now a scenario where the court system is basically saying some of these things are just, you can't do that, right? And so I don't know where it's all going to settle. Best we can do is move forward sort of business as usual, how we would normally do things, which I think has been our approach all along.
Keep going and carry on.
Right. I don't have any other ideas about how to deal with this, except I've got an award in the hopper right now too. It's through the USGS, which is Department of the Interior, and it's not a dissimilar landscape. We're running a Geological Society of America regional conference here over spring break at JMU over at the Madison Hotel, and all the NSF participants had to pull out. All the USGS participants had to pull out, not necessarily because of these orders, but because right now the US government is operating under a continuing resolution, which means they're operating under last year's budget. The current year, even though it's more than 6 months into the current fiscal year, there is no budget for the current fiscal year. But the continuing resolution expires on March 14th, which is like 5 days before our conference. So, there's no budget or continuing resolution in place, they're not going anywhere. This is where we are. So anyway, that's kind of the current landscape. So, having said that, let's continue with the previously scheduled program. And so here's what I did. I thought a little bit about, okay, I know I'm going to be saying things that have already been said, and that's okay. So, if I'm covering things that you've covered or others have covered before, that's okay. But if there's new stuff that we want to talk about more, just stop me, and we'll do that as we go along. I put together just a few links here at the beginning of this PowerPoint that you may already have. Some of them I'm rather sure you probably do, but some things that are worth knowing about. So starting with this top one, and this, if you go to any NSF website these days, at the very top you see this thing right here, which says learn about NSF's implementation of recent executive orders. And so this is being updated, clearly not very frequently because it says the last update was February 21st. But this just is frequently asked questions that people have in the midst of the chaos that's going on. Probably the most important thing is this first one right here, okay? Which NSF continues to apply the required intellectual merit and broader impact review criteria as well as any solicitation-specific criteria. So, in other words, this is business as usual, and that's what we're going to basically operate forward from. Second one here is the NSF holding review panels. The answer is yes. In fact, Mindy Capaldi is scheduled, was just contacted and is scheduled to do a review at the beginning of April. Okay, so reviews are moving forward again. Not all of them. Some of the ones that the one that I was supposed to be on, I think has been canceled, period, is my guess. But, so it doesn't mean that everything's moving forward, but some of them are. Okay, I will leave that one where it is, but just keep in mind that any website you go to has that at the very top if you want to just sort of see what's going on. And both Ready and the JMU libraries have a link to various informational sites about what's going on with the federal government and research and education. The PAPG, y'all know about the PAPG by now, hopefully, right? The PAPG still is the place to go, and the 2024 version is still the place to go, so that link is there, but for any sorts of general scenario questions, that's the place to go. And then there's the career program itself, which I'm sure you've all been to, but that's also the place to go. The full proposal deadline for this year is July 23rd. It's slated as being the fourth Wednesday of July, I think is the way it's supposed to be moving forward. So last year it was July 24th, and this year it's July 23rd. So on this, which I printed out, you may have seen this too, but I came across this in the course of looking for things. This has a really nice, we've talked a lot about timelines for career proposals, so this has a really nice timeline on the back when you might want to make sure you're getting things done with enough lead time to get the proposal submitted. The only thing I would recommend is this, of course, is 2024, so that second line down there, the thing that says July 24th, it should be July 23rd for 2025, so it means everything's off by a day, that's all. But I just thought that might be something useful if you haven't seen it before to look at and think about as you're working on career-style proposals. Okay, the other things that I think are really helpful are career contacts by directorate. So there's a general career person, but then each directorate has a different group of contact people based on not just the director, but also the program. Again, you may have seen all this before, but if you're bio, these are the people you want to be in contact with. Computer information science and engineering, that's the group. Just straight engineering, geo, math and physical sciences, etc. Right? So this contacts page, these are the people specifically in your discipline that you might want to reach out to. Career webinar materials and FAQs. I'm going to go into some of these. There's a little career webinar they ran last year. They haven't done one this year, but this is the one they ran last year. And these webinar slides, I'm actually going to use some of those in just a few minutes. But that's worth looking at. And then the facts, frequently asked questions, which is the other link I put on the other one. Again, another good place to look for basic information about career. awards policies, things like that. It's got proposal submission, eligibility, budget prep, all that sort of stuff. Yeah.
Do we know roughly when the new webinars will be held?
Do we know if there will be a new webinar? Right, I don't know. The last one, let's go back a page. I don't know if it tells. So this is May 6th, 2024, right? So they held it sometime before that. Yeah. You know, one would hope they would do one this year as well, but we'll see. I don't know. But these are the FAQs that I was just on. So what I thought I'd do is, since you've talked a lot about careers already, and since we're specifically supposed to focus on broader impacts in this section, what I thought I'd do is actually highlight some of the key elements in this webinar that kind of target some of the specific broader impact stuff. So I'm stealing it from the webinar in 2024 that's on that link. I sent it to Lauren, so she can stick it up or whatever. So a lot of the slides I'm not going to show because I don't think they're particularly relevant to what we do. But what we're going to do today. But what I thought I'd do is highlight some of the things in here that are really broader impacts targeted. And so all the stuff in red is the stuff that I've highlighted that I thought would be worth thinking about today. And we've talked about this a lot before, right? But career proposals, they're single PIs, we know that. They include both research and education activities, and they're supposed to be integrated, right? So that whole integration of research and education is what makes career special. And, you know, and these things about have you, are you, right? Have you demonstrated commitment to both research and education, right? I mean, that's the tale you really have to tell that's important for careers, right? Now, this is investigator eligibility. Have both research and educational responsibilities at your institution, right? And so somebody who's just a research scientist at an institution might find a challenge here, right? You all are in great shape, right? Because you're doing both of those things at JMU. And your appointment at your institution has to reflect that, research and education. So you see, they keep hitting both of these two components. The other thing is the scope of these can vary, right? Can vary in your disciplinary community, might vary also at your institution. So part of your challenge is to be able to describe the scope of what your responsibilities are and the scope of how you're going to do these within the proposal. We've talked about this before, but I thought this was a really useful slide. I don't know whether you've seen this one before. This is out of that webinar slide deck. The way these things are reviewed across NSF varies immensely. So ad hoc and panel. So ad hoc, of course, are reviews that are sent, individual reviews sent to an individual faculty member or expert in the field, and they then send back a written review. Okay? Versus panel, which is when a bunch of experts get together collectively and talk about proposals. The format I'm familiar with is, because I was in Geo, is basically you send all these things out for ad hoc review, they all come in, and then you also convene a panel of, I don't know, 10 people, 10 experts, and in the panel, they have the ad hoc reviews available to them as they're discussing. So they can say, all right, well, this person who reviewed it thought this person thought something else, and then the panelists themselves weigh in on what they think. So it's a two-phase review. The key difference here is ad hoc reviewers only see that one proposal that they were sent. Panelists see all the proposals that are competing in a given competition. So they'll see all the geo careers. And sometimes careers are thrown in with other proposals, and they'll see everything and evaluate things collectively all together.
How many ad hocs judge one proposal? Is there a number?
We always like to have at least 3 ad hocs, which means when I was a program director, if I wanted to make sure I had at least 3, and I'd like to have more than 3, I'd like to have 4 or 5, I'd send it out to like 8 people, because you know, you're not gonna get some, right? But I've reviewed, or sat on panels where there've been 7 ad hocs that have come in, you know, I mean, so, but you always wanna have at least 3, that's kind of the low bar. Okay, so ad hoc and panel, most of geo, most of biology, most of SBE, which is sociology, behavioral economics, AGS, which is atmospheric sciences anyway, uses only ad hoc, fair enough. Dedicated career panels, and this really just means they get enough career proposals that they can have a dedicated panel specifically devoted to that, or maybe more than one. Engineering, computer information systems, and EDU education. And then MPS, which is mathematics and physical sciences, panel only, or chemistry, materials, a mix of ad hoc and panels, mathematical sciences mostly panel, physics mostly ad hoc. See, these, it's just all over the place how they choose to do them. A lot of it depends on what the proposal pressure is. How many engineering, they have many career proposals that come in, and so they have to separate out completely as separate career panels. Anyway, that just gives you a rough idea of how varied these things can be across the directorates, the NSF. Okay, so as we assume that the NSF is going to function as normal with their criteria, we need to think about both intellectual merit, but Robbie already talked a certain amount about that couple times ago, whatever, and then broader impacts, right? But the additional consideration for careers is this integration of research and education. And that is the special consideration in careers, and so I do want to think a little bit about that, because some of this stuff can be thought of and sort of interfingers with broader impacts as well. So, right, I think you kind of know what intellectual merit is, right? Potential your research has to advance the knowledge base in the field. Broader impacts, you'll notice that this statement specifically focuses on society and societal outcomes. Okay, so this is broader impacts outside of your discipline. Okay, it might be to other science societies, it might be to the general public, it might be to K-12 institutions, any of that stuff. But it really is society and societal outcomes. So those are kind of important things to think about. And then, integration of the two is a relationship between proposed research and education activities. Some of this stuff can absolutely be part of this education piece, right? But the integration, right, and the relationship, I know we've talked about this before, but I think it's really important that these things fit together, that they aren't just two isolated things. Okay, this is the standard 5 for review criteria, right? So the only one that has a difference is the first one. Advanced knowledge for intellectual merit or benefit society and societal outcomes, right? That's the only one in which there's a difference between the 5 criteria for intellectual merit and broader impacts. These other 4 are the same for broader impacts as they are for intellectual merit. In other words, if somebody's evaluating broader impact, which they have to do in their review, they have to call that out separately from intellectual merit. And in broader impact, they have to hit all these 5. Just like in intellectual merit, they have to address all these 5 when they're doing their review. And keep in mind that the review, you have to specifically target intellectual merit and then do a review based on that, and broader impacts and do a review based on that. The new PES system, which is the proposal evaluation system that the NSF has put in place ever since last spring, so I've used it for a few panels now, has boxes to fill in, and those two things, they're completely separated out. Yeah?
And is there, for the career, is there a box or a set for the integration?
Well,
Separate?
so there will be a separate, let me back up one. There will be a separate section in which you address this.
Okay.
Because usually what there is in PES is they can set it up differently for different styles of proposals. But there's the intellectual merit section, there's the broader impact section, and then there's the other criteria, right? Other evaluation criteria, that's where that would come in.
Okay.
And it would be a separate box.
Mhm.
Okay, broader impacts, right? So again, society and societal outcomes. Take this a little bit with a grain of salt, right? You don't have to tick off all of these boxes. What we would tell people with broader impacts is it's not a laundry list of things you need to tick off, okay? It is usually presented as these are things you might want to think about in your broader impacts, but choose a couple of them and do them well. Don't try and tick every single one of them cursorily. Right? So think about how some of these things could be integrated into your proposal and into your planned project in a way that's going to be compelling and effective and influence, right? Have positive outcomes and worthwhile outcomes to society. This is the way I think I would do it. I think this is really good. This last thing here too that they put on this slide is how will the research results be applied in order for the general public to care about them, right? And so often, this is the sort of elevator speech thing. Can you tell a complete stranger why what you do is important to you and why what you do might be important to them, right? Can you sell the story? Can you sell your project to not just experts in your field, not just other scientists, but to the general public? That's really what I think it really comes down to. So this is the integration of research and education part, and the slide that's on here. And you know, this top one, the integration is the core of a career proposal. So it's what makes careers different. It's what makes careers potentially more challenging to people, but the idea is that careers are supposed to set the PI up for the next 5 years of their career, right? Both in terms of research and in terms of education, the whole package, right? That's the idea of the proposals. So, pretty important, right? So, one of the things that I like here that they highlight is, right, how is the research going to impact your educational goals? How well do you, or can you integrate the research you want to do into your teaching, into your mentorship, into all those other components of a faculty member's career? And to me, this is the sort of thing that makes JMU very compelling for this sort of thing, because this is kind of what we do, right? Or what we try and do anyway, right? Is linking research that we do, student research that we mentor, and some of that into our educational, into some form of classes and things like that. That whole integration thing, which kind of is the whole point of how we do a lot of things at JMU, caters to this. So I think you can make a strong case for that sort of thing here. And again, how the education activities feed back into research. So it's that, you know, circular interfingering that I think that's one of the reasons that we can really be competitive in this sort of field. And, right, this thing here that I highlighted, I don't know why I just highlighted that one, I should have said the other ones, but, right, the needs and context of his or her organization. So, bring JMU into the picture, right? What are JMU's strengths? Undergraduate research, or, you know, maybe master's research, or the integration of those two is into classes you teach, or, you know, cures that you're doing, right? Or field research that you're bringing students, right? If you can tie it all together with recognized strengths at JMU, I think that's all to the benefit. And then career development, right? I mean, the whole idea of this is make a case for this is going to advance your career over the next 5 years. Most career proposals are 5-year proposals, maybe with a couple extra years if you go for no-cost extensions. So think about that, right? Next 5 years. How is this going to move everything forward for your next 5 years? Okay. Some of these are just pretty obvious, right? But what do reviewers want to know? Okay? Remember, when you write a proposal, you are basically presenting your case to the reviewers, to the ad hoc reviewers and to the panelists. Yes, you're presenting your case to the program directors, but a program director is not going to recommend for funding a proposal that does not have strong reviews. You know, if they're middle of the road, if they're sort of middle to middle high, they might be able to make a case for elevating that to being funded. But if you're middle or below in the reviewer's eyes, there just isn't enough money to go around. So it's really hard for them to advocate for that. And in fact, the way it used to be in GEO, and I don't know if this is still the case, if a program director wanted to fund a proposal that had a poor review, they had to explicitly address why that poor review wasn't relevant to their decision. Similarly, if a program director wanted to decline a proposal with an excellent review, they had to do the same thing. Well, I'm declining this even though it got an excellent review because of blah, 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 blah. Right? So it really is selling your case to the reviewers. And of course, each time you submit a proposal, you're going to have different reviewers, probably. I used to like to have a couple, at least 1 or 2 reviewers review it the second time around because they've got the context of seeing, you know, this is what it was and this is what it is now. But most of the reviewers are going to be new. So just keep that in mind. Right? What is it about? That's obvious. How will you do it? Right? That's the methods. Can you do it? In other words, do you have the background? Can you convince the reviewers you have the background and the knowledge and the infrastructure to do it? Right? Is it worth doing? Right? I mean, why is this proposal the one that should rise to the top of the heap? You got to sell it. Right? And will it provide a foundation for the next 5 years of your research and your education? So that's the extra thing, right? It's got to go in here. And I like this last thing, right? This is basically all you need to do. It's simple, right? Piece of cake. But you need to do it, and you need to do it well. You have to be convincing. Things that, I mean, I've had plenty of proposals that have been declined, and almost always when I read reviews, I'm like, well, I don't agree with the reviewer, but the message here is that I didn't sell it well enough. I didn't describe what I wanted to do well enough. It wasn't compelling and clear enough to them to make them go say, yeah, that's cool, right? So that's, to me, it's always about the things that don't work usually don't work because I didn't sell it well enough. Okay. Thoughts, questions based on that stuff? The other thing I did is, as you probably know, if you go into the NSF Awards database, just type in NSF Awards search, right? You can search on any type of grant, region, PI, anything you want, and it'll show you the abstracts, or the details of the things that were awarded. It doesn't show you the proposals, just the awarded ones, right? So it'll show you the details of the project, the amount that was awarded, the PI, the program that it's in, and then it shows you a 2-paragraph abstract. So I don't know, have we talked about the abstracts at all before? I don't know. So what happens when you get an award is this is the public record of the award that is made. So in other words, when various Congress people, right, in the US want to search keywords for awarded proposals, right, this is the thing they see. right? This is what they tap into. This is the public notification and synopsis of the award. The way that we were taught to write these is that the first paragraph is a general a general summary of the work that you're going to do, written for the general public. So this is targeted, and they used to say in 8th grade level, write this so an 8th grader could understand what you're saying. The second paragraph is the technical summary of what you're going to do. Okay? So think of these things that way. They're almost always 2 paragraphs and then some NSF boilerplate at the bottom. General public for specifics for the experts. In other words, all the acronyms and the words nobody knows go down here, and this is the general stuff up here. So in some ways they kind of duplicate each other in a lot of ways, but that's the idea behind it. So what I did is I took, just send these, here's 4 for you all. I printed off 3 career proposals that I thought it might be worth just looking at these. So these are just the public abstracts, and the stuff that's highlighted in yellow are basically the broader impacts and sort of education elements of them. And what I did is, the other thing that I'll mention is the award number at the top. The first 2 digits of NSF award numbers are the year it was awarded. So an award that starts with 24 means it was awarded last year. There are no 25s yet. And this first one here that I think I handed out, which says 19, that was awarded in 2019. Okay, so you can always tell when it's awarded by the first 2 digits of the award number. So there are 3 of them here. One is Integrative Organizational Systems. The second one is Earth Sciences, EAR. And the third one is Mathematical Physical Sciences, specifically Division of Mathematical Sciences, DMS. And what I tried to do here is look also at the institutions for each of these. The first one is an R1, Tufts. Okay. The second one is a PUI, right, Colby College, Maine. And the third one is kind of like us, right, Texas San Marcos. Texas State, San Marcos. Not all that dissimilar in some ways from JMU. So I tried to give you a variety of different things. And part of the reason I did that is just look at the amount of yellow. In the first one, which is Organizational Systems, right? The second one, which is Earth Sciences. And the third one, which is Mathematics. So in the third one, there's no yellow at all in the second paragraph. I read through that and I'm like, there's nothing in there about broader impacts in that second paragraph or education. Right? Which is interesting. That tells you something about the division, right? And what they're looking for. Because usually when these things are written, the way we used to do it is the program director, when they're going to make an award, they will send an email to the PI and say, hey, we're thinking about recommending this for award, in which case everybody gets all excited, PI gets all excited. And then they follow that up with, please send me a 2-paragraph abstract of your award. This, right? They have the PIs write it, because they don't want to write it, right? If the PIs want the award bad enough, they can do the work, right? So they have the PIs write this, but they give them a template for sort of, this is what the first paragraph ought to state, not in specifics for their award, but just in general. This is what the first paragraph ought to cover, and the second paragraph you can go into more specific details on it. But for me, when I look at this, this tells me that the first paragraph, the program directors in mathematics, right, mathematical sciences, they put their broader impact stuff and their educational stuff in the general public part of it. And the second paragraph, all they're concerned about is the research specifics. Interesting. In geo, right, in earth sciences, this is almost half of both paragraphs, right? So that tells you in that directorate and in that division how important the education and broader impacts are in their career award. This one, it's reasonably substantial, right? It's not as long as the research parts of the abstracts, but it's still there. The other thing that I think we touched on before is not only are career awards evaluated differently in different directorates, they actually can ask for different amounts of money in different programs or directorates. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think all career proposals now are at least 500,000, right, is the target, I believe. When I was there, some of them were 400, some of them were 5, some of them were more than that. I think the baseline now is 5. That's the target number, I think, for most of them. Some of them are bigger than that. Some directors that you actually can ask for more. They're all 5-year awards, but some of them you can ask for 6 or 7. I saw some of them in here that are actually more than that, and I don't know how that happens, so I don't know how they actually have $1 million career proposal, but I did see it. It's in there if you look at the award section, so there's some programs that are higher than that. That's the sort of thing to talk to your program director about. You know, what should your target number be?
Okay, it says the career award, including indirect costs, is expected to total a minimum of $400,000 for the 5-year duration, with the following exceptions. Awards to the proposal for the Director of Biological Sciences, Director of Engineering, or the Office of Polar Programs are expected to total a minimum of $500,000 for the 5-year duration.
Okay, so that's not dissimilar to when I was there. Yeah. And remember, that's 5 years, so if it's a $500,000 proposal, that's $100 a year, right? Isn't that lot? It isn't that much. And when, you know, when things, the end of things come down in this day and age, $100K a year, if we still have IDC, right? IDC folds into that. So $100K a year, if it's 50% IDC, is only really $66,000 to you. Right? So anyway, things to think about. I don't want to specifically go through and address each one of these, but I think it's valuable to take a look at this and see how they do that, right? The Tufts one here highlights a new undergraduate research course at Tufts University, right? That's how they're folding education in and broader impacts to their students and that sort of thing, right? If you look at some of the other ones, environmental science education, right? They're targeting, so this is the Colby College one, computational thinking, data science, there you go, computational proficiency into a revamped curriculum. So again, that's how they're tying the education into that sort of thing. Now, if you're talking about a curriculum, you got to make the case that you can do this because usually single PIs don't have control over a curriculum, right, for a program. So one of the things that career proposals have to have is a 2-page letter from their department chair, right? It's a required element of a career proposal. So that's the sort of place, if I were going to say I'm going to do a curriculum or a course revamp or rewrite or pilot something new, I'd want my unit head's supporting letter to say, I'm fully behind this, we're going to make this happen, blah, 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 right? I mean, that's the kind of thing that a reviewer's going to want to say, all right, unit head's behind this, good to go. Similarly, if you are going to say that your educational outreach component of your proposal is going to focus on developing materials and a program at an informal education location, a national park, or some sort of museum facility for the general public, you better have a letter of support in there, or a letter of collaboration from the person running that entity to show that they're on board with this, right? And this comes up all the time, if you say you're going to do something and there's no documentation, that the people you're gonna do it with are on board with this, it ain't gonna fly. That's true for research facilities too. If you're gonna use somebody's lab facilities, you better have a letter of collaboration from them, letter of support. Okay, I've done all the talking. Thoughts, ideas, questions, follow-up discussion?
I'll throw one out if no one else has one. So looking at these and from the talk, it looks like it's focused very much on educational impacts as the broader impact. Do you think there are areas in the NSF that want to see broader impacts besides just the educational activities, or?
So one of the other, I meant to bring this up, I'm glad you brought that up. One key component of broader impacts that almost every proposal has is the involvement of students or postdocs and the mentorship and training of those students or postdocs in your research program. You gotta hit that, right? You gotta say, this proposal is gonna include 2, 3 undergraduates, 1, 2 grad students each year working on this project. This is how I'm gonna, then you'll have in your supplementary documents, or maybe a postdoc, right? In your supplementary documents, you'll have a postdoc mentoring plan or a grad student mentoring plan, or if you're in geosciences, you have to have an undergraduate student mentoring plan, right? And so part of broader impacts is training the next generation. So I think that has to be in there, it has to be a part of your proposal. I don't think a career will fly if you're not involving undergraduates, graduates, etc. You don't have to have a postdoc. I mean, you might not. JMU generally doesn't have as strong a culture of postdocs. There are some, and in the right scenarios, they can fit in really well. So that's not an essential, but I think incorporating undergraduates, or if you're a department that has a graduate program, graduate students, I think, yeah, that's really important. So the way I think about this is there are kind of three elements here. One is training the next generation of professionals, and that's what I just talked about. The second is integrating the project research and results into courses and curricula. So that's sort of the JMU-focused educational component. And the third thing is the broader public. How are you going to disseminate results or involve the broader community in what you're doing? To me, those are sort of the three main things. That last one is often thought of as outreach.